question that we get often is why, go to Gaza? It's a dangerous place. There's a war going on, and
I do need. Oh, I see. Okay. I feel like I hear myself in the mic. It's a different sensation. But so, if I'm too loud, tell me. I'll try to tone it down. One of the first questions we get is, why go to Gaza? It's very dangerous. It's a war zone. Are you not worried about going to Gaza? And obviously, we do worry about going to Gaza. It's a very thought out process. My family has to be involved, my wife and kids. And I think it comes down to a couple of things. Number one, my time of death is not going to change by me going to Gaza. If it's time for me to die, I'm going to die in Portland or I'm going to die to Gaza. So I'm not really worried about the death part of it. What scares me more is coming back without an arm or a leg. And if that would have been, the case, that would have been a much bigger test for me than dying, because my time of death won't change. And then we look at the obligation of jihad, and we have opportunities in life that come that you could actually do something that's more meaningful than just saying I want to do it or contributing money or something like that. And it's an opportunity that a lot of people don't have. So when it comes my way, I feel that it's hard for me to turn it down and be excusable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I had the opportunity to perform some type of jihad and I turned it down. And it's hard with, especially my mom, she's in town, and she was very nervous and anxious about me going to Gaza, and she's not in the best of health anyway, and she learned that I'm going to Gaza, and all of a sudden the fear and the anxiety and everything exacerbated her health condition. So it's a very stressful decision to make, but from a spiritual standpoint, from a connection with Allah standpoint, I think it is the right decision to do. So in preparation, there's a lot of things that happen. We all should be prepared as far as like getting things in order in case we die anyway, because anybody could drop that at any time. But it becomes more prudent to have these discussions with my wife and my kids. Well, what if I don't come back? And what does life look like without me? And some of these discussions we had to have. We had to keep in mind that I have to go to Gaza and be self-sufficient. So there's a bit of shopping, preparing luggage to take with you, my sleeping bag, my food, my water filters, my water purification tablets, a little bit of shopping to do. A lot of people who are active in terms of here in the community, in terms of trying to get things organized, as soon as they figure out that I'm traveling to Gaza, everybody wants to give me something to take with me. So a lot of people wanted to bring some medical supplies, other supplies. Alhamdulillah, the community was very generous with monetary donations. We was able to take a very large sum of money into Gaza and distribute it to people over there. So here is just some of the pictures of packing, getting ready, my suitcases at the airport with all the luggage. Turkish Airlines was the worst, though they did not budge on anything. They charged me $600 for extra luggage. And then when I got to the gate, they said my backpack and my carry-on are too big, and they wanted to charge me another $300. And that's when I flipped out on them and started yelling and saying I need the supervisor to come, and I already paid $600. I made a scene at the gate. And it worked. It didn't charge the extra $300, but they were the worst. Then we get to Cairo, and the team of physicians go there. There is plenty of organizations that are sending medical teams into Gaza. So we happened to be one of this organization. Our team had 10 members. The name of the organization I went with is Palestinian American Bridge, and this is the team. This picture is the suitcases in the van. We had three of these vans carrying between people and luggage. So alhamdulillah, we're able to take into Gaza whatever we can carry, basically, whatever the car can carry. And at the border, there are workers that help with luggage to transfer from one side of the border to the other side of the border. So we took with us, there's an extra slide, I was ahead for myself, but we took with us, okay, I'm sorry, I'll go slide by slide. So en route to the border, you see a lot of trucks that are full of aid donated by multiple organizations, whether they're governmental or not, and they're parked before the border. We're on the Egyptian side still. So this is what you'll see is just rows and rows of trucks. They go like at least probably 5 to 10 miles of rows and rows of trucks just parked, waiting for their turn to go in, if they ever get the turn. And then you see some abandoned cargo. Again, we're still on the Egyptian side. We don't know if this was just abandoned because the truck had to leave, or somebody gave up on it, or they just dropped things and don't know what happens to it or what will eventually happen to it. And then go back to our luggage. We carry all these things that we were able to take in with them. So we take in medical supplies, medicines, our food with some extra, and whatever else we need while we're in there to be self-sufficient. Crossing the border itself is it's a journey. So the Egyptian side, we unload all the bags, they go through inspection, and then they go through X-ray machines and then get loaded on the bus on the other side of the kind of transit zone, which is the buffer zone between both sides, the Egyptian side and the Palestinian side. And then we wait, and there might be some pictures coming in just a hall waiting for passport approval. And then even though this border is not controlled physically by any Israeli authorities, you don't meet any Israeli authorities in the border, it's Egyptian and then Palestinian, but nobody crosses without approval from Israel. So they take the passports take a journey up to the intelligence office, they stay there for a couple of hours waiting for authorizations, and then they come back. And we did have one of our physicians denied entry. They said that the clearance didn't come through. So a team of 10 became a team of 9 as we entered through. And then the bus goes and it kind of drives that buffer zone between the Egyptian and Palestinian side. There will be some pictures, I'll show them a little bit more. And then you unload the bus into the Palestinian side, which they also inspect. And then you take it, and then you're in Rafah. So we saw all the videos of the trucks piled on the Egyptian side, and then once you're in Rafah, you see these kind of rows of tents. The fence in the background is that fence between Gaza from the Palestinian side and then Rafah from the Egyptian side. And it's just a long fence, and these are all makeshift tents all along the fence, with literally aid on the other side of the fence that can't make it in to these people. Very sad situation. In Rafah, we'll see some destruction, but we'll see more destruction as we go up north. So examples of people just building tents over their lost houses to stay there. There's nobody else to go. Rafah is a small city. It's almost as big as Beaverton, actually, kind of by square miles. And now it hosts about 1.8 million people. Beaverton's population is about 100,000 people. So you could imagine that there is crowds everywhere. It's not just because people are on the street. It's trying to buy bread, then there's a line. Trying to use an ATM machine, there's a crowd. Any basic necessity that you're trying to do, you're navigating a huge amount of crowds in a very small space. For those of us who got blessed to go to Hajj, and the amount of people that go to Hajj is almost the amount of people of Rafah, and the area of Mecca is about 7 times as big as Rafah. So that crowd that you see in Hajj is less of what you would expect on a day-to-day basis in Rafah nowadays. What this gentleman is doing here is he's digging a hole in the ground, and that hole in the ground will be surrounded by tarp, and that will be the bathroom, because the people living in tents don't have access to any sanitation facilities. So they build these makeshift bathrooms, and then once the hole is full, then it gets buried, and then they move the tarp a few feet in one direction and dig another hole to keep the makeshift bathrooms going. Once we get to the hospitals, you'll notice that the hospital are also being used as shelters. So these are the hallways in the hospital full with these makeshift tents, and people are living there. These are all displaced families. What makes them get to the hospital is probably because a lot of people, not some, but a lot of the hospital workers that move south go to the hospital to see if they can offer their services. Because there is a strain on all kinds of staff. So, medical staff have been injured and have family killed and have to take care of their displaced families. Same for nurses, same for, hospital workers, cleaners, whatever you do. So a lot of the people that came from the north that had the skill would show up in the hospital and volunteer their services and then live there. So it becomes a place of shelter, but also a place of work. These are our living compartments. Basically, whichever room, depending on which hospital it is, whichever room is available that's not used for patients is used for makeshift bunkers for the visiting doctors. With the amount of injuries in Rafah, and all of you see it, obviously the hospitals are overwhelmed. But some of the souvenirs we collect, a bullet that came out of a child, miraculously enough, that actually child survived with very minimal injuries. That bullet was extracted from her belly and didn't have a lot of injuries, but she was lucky. This fragment down here is a bullet fragment and a piece of brain coming out of somebody's head. The medical equipment is very old and not well maintained, but they do with what they can, given the circumstances. I was also blessed to have the opportunity to go on the first international team to go north of Gaza. So that journey was coordinated with the United Nations, the World Health Organization. We travel in United Nations cars, which are armored cars. We'll see some pictures as we go. And then we traveled north. They deliver us to the hospital north, and then when the time ends, they come back, and then they take us back south. So the first video we're going to see here is just on the road traveling north. I'm filming from the car, and there isn't a structure that you could see for kilometers at a time that's still standing. It's just complete destruction, everything, homes, businesses, whatever the entire land is gone down to rubble. And then, I'm actually in the way of the pictures. And you change side from the camera and you keep going, and everything is just destroyed. This is a dead body that was on the road. This was close enough to the checkpoint that even if the family knew that the body was there, they couldn't retrieve it, because if they get close, they would be fired at. This is us with the United Nations cars and vests and stuff like that, and then just destruction everywhere. You would see pictures like this, wherever you go, basically. At the checkpoint, it's just a makeshift checkpoint. It's nothing fancy, but the entire area around it is cleared. They have clear access for kilometers, and their drones are active all the time. And then there's tanks and snipers and everything, so nobody can get close to these without them knowing about it. But you get to the checkpoint, and this is the security officer from the United Nations. He's the only one that leaves the vehicles. He goes and keeps the distance from the soldiers, puts the passports on the way there. It was just on the ground. On the way back, they had this kind of concrete block that you put the passports on. You walk away. The Israeli soldiers walk out, take the passports, do their inspection, and then same thing, come back, deliver it, and then they give the light for the green light for the convoy to go, and then it goes. So when we're approaching the checkpoint, you park about probably a kilometer and a half before you reach the checkpoint, and you wait there for them to call in a signal that we're clear to go. And that waiting period was about 2.5 hours on each way. So you just park the car, wait for 2.5 hours, get the green light, and then approach the checkpoint. This was a video that the United Nations filmed and posted on their website for our journey. So I'll play it.
This will be your team. They stay here with you. We have four. Okay, we have surgeon, orthopedist, anesthesiologist, yes, and emergency doctor. They will be part of your team. Ahmed Ebeid. Ahmed Ebeid. And here we are. We finally bring them here. Okay, so they are going to stay here for 2 weeks, actually. And then we are already organizing the next rotation.
I want to thank WHO greatly for their efforts to bring an excellent team here to help the people here.
Today we drove from the south to the north with complete ruins all through the road. There is no building that's left intact. The working conditions for the medical staff here is very hard. They are working without support, so they're working tirelessly. They're exhausted, very limited supplies. They have to be more like magicians than doctors, trying to figure out how to help the patients with whatever they have. It's a very, very hard situation.
The people here are absolutely amazing, and they're worth if we could save one life, if we can make a difference for one child, if we can get one child transferred out of here to an outside country to get the care he needs for a limb reconstruction or rehab for amputation, it's worth it. We all have to do our part.
فرحانة فرحانة
Okay.
فوتو يا باشا. اعمل له بقى يلا.
Today we went again to Kamal Adwan Hospital in North Gaza. We successfully deployed an international emergency medical team that will support the hospital for the next weeks. Additionally, we also referred one critical patient affected by cystic fibrosis from Kamal Adwan here to IMC Field Hospital in Rafah, together with the caretaker and the rest of the family. And in the next few days, we will also coordinate for the international medical evacuation abroad.
It was a pretty heavy mission, but we are really happy that it was successful. We already could evacuate 2 patients last Saturday, and we hope that we can proceed like this because there are many, many, many more people that urgently need better medical care.
So they evacuated 2 patients on that Saturday that you're talking about. We were there Thursday, they took 2 more. Then for the week that we were there was no evacuation. And they were supposed to take some when we were evacuated, and they failed to allow it. So in that 2 weeks, they got 4 patients out of hundreds waiting in line. I mean, success counts. We've got
bigger scale of things, it's not an effective way of evacuation. So this is us in United Nations gear with helmets and bulletproof vests. We travel in bulletproof cars. I think it's just to make us feel safer. You all saw that the international kitchen workers were, fired on with missiles, and their gear didn't really help them. So it was, I think, more to boost our morale and make us feel safe for more than anything else. This was our sleeping compartment in the hospital in the north. They had this, it was actually a sleeping compartment for the doctors before the war. So they now use it for the visiting doctors. So it's actually pretty nice, all things considered. We had a bed, we had a bathroom, we had a table with an area to eat. And then this is a picture from the window. The windows were not, they're hole in the walls, but there are no actual windows because they were destroyed. This hospital was, this is a picture from the window, and you can see that every building is damaged. This hospital was attacked by the Israelis. It was surrounded for 2 weeks. We'll see a little bit picture of some of the damage done in a little bit. But then when they left, they were able to get the hospital back functional to whatever capacity they can. So they got the emergency room functional, the operating room functional, the physician wards functional. So it's a semi-working hospital, but not ideal, but it's the best they have. It's the only fully functional, one of two fully functional hospitals in the entire north of Gaza. So the north, the Israelis say that they finished their mission there and they defeated Hamas and displaced everyone south. And I don't know if they use that for propaganda because the attacks continue on a daily basis. Drones survey the area, and any building that looks like it's still intact gets targeted. When we were there, there was a business that, it's a fairly large business. I think I'll have a picture of it a little bit. It's used to sell appliances. And it survived 6 months of war. It wasn't hit, and it was hit when we were there. It was hit the week we were there, completely destroyed. So there's still an ongoing, just targeted, purposeful destruction of anything that's not been destroyed yet. And in my opinion, this is just the agenda, is to try to level the ground so it becomes uninhabitable. And those who are refusing to stay refusing to leave are being put under more and more pressure to leave. Because if you want to leave from the north to the south, you can. You can submit a request and they let you go southwards, but they don't let you go back north. So this is right after Maghrib, and the smoke in the back is a fresh attack.
This happened right behind us. You can see the smoke from the strike. There's a couple blocks down. Ambulances are departing now to see if there's any injured.
They also target the medical team. So the week we were there were 3 paramedics that were killed because they hit the ambulance when they went out to retrieve some injuries. So a bombing happened, the ambulance goes to try to retrieve those who are injured, and then the ambulance itself gets attacked. And we had 3 paramedics die in the week that we were there. The north is a lot harsher living conditions than the south. Depends on how you look at it. In the south, people are living in tents, so they don't have a place to live. But access to food is a little bit better than the north. The north, you get the homelessness because people's homes are destroyed and they're staying in makeshift shelters that were destroyed schools, and we'll see some pictures. But access to food has been a problem in the north. The average person that we worked with, and these are medical people, so they're, generally speaking, before the war, they were the top class of Gaza. They lost 40 to 50 kilograms each, more than 100 pounds. One of the surgeons we worked with, he's a retired physician, he's older, he's probably in his 70s, and they were telling me how he was pretty chubby before the war, and he undid his belt and showed me how he's kind of swimming in his pants from before the war to after the war. But every person that you meet tells you, well, yeah, I lost 15 kilos, I lost 20 kilos, I lost 30 kilos. And the children are suffering even more. You get regression because their children are supposed to grow, but they're not. They're actually losing weight, so you get regression in their abilities. So you get, 12, 13-year-olds that are looking like 6 and 7 years old, and then you get the 6 and 7 years old that are not able to walk and their talking abilities impaired. So they all regress because of the lack of food. So it's very harsh living conditions in the north, a lot worse than the south. But when you talk to the people that refuse to leave, they have various reasons why they don't want to leave. Some of them say, well, I'm going to go live in a tent anyway, so I'm just going to stay here. What's worse, living in a tent or being hungry? And, you pick your battles. Some people couldn't leave because they're either caring for elderly or they have disability in the family that they don't want to leave behind, so they stay to take care of them. And a few actually, a lot of the people that stayed by will. I'm not leaving my home, I'm not leaving my land. If I'm going to die, I'm just going to die right here. And that's the kind of the willpower that you see in the people of Gaza. That was amazing. This is a water truck because so Gaza doesn't have a public water utility even before the war. The Israelis wouldn't let it happen. But it's rich with rich with water underneath the ground. So they tap into that. They tap into underwater wells, but it takes energy to pump the water from the underwater wells up. So generally speaking, before the war, you'd have the neighborhood well. And that neighborhood well is powered by solar panels, and then it pumps up water, and then the water is connected to a bunch of houses in the neighborhood, and then the next neighborhood has its well, and so on and so forth. So early on in the war, the house that had the power for the well was hit. They systematically hit all the power for these wells very early on in the war. So fresh water became a problem. So they still try to get fresh water from wherever well is still working, and then you find these trucks trying to distribute them in different areas. This was a demolished mosque, and there is not a single mosque left functional in the northern Gaza. There isn't a single school left functional in the northern Gaza. This is the charging station because most homes have lost power. Again, their dependence on solar power in Gaza was big before the war, and all the solar panels were targeted early in the war. So they get the batteries from all the damaged cars. They charge them with recouped solar panels that they find damaged from homes, and then they make charging stations, and that's how you get some power. The makeshift market, this used to be a very busy commercial area. I actually visited that area pre-war when I was in Gaza before, and it went from this, vibrant place where you go and you find plenty of restaurants and sweets and ice cream places and whatever you want, to complete destruction and just makeshift markets. These are kids that are carrying wood because wood is the fuel for cooking. There's no propane or natural gas now. Before the war, it was all propane tanks, and they can't get them anymore. So they collect wood from damaged buildings, and they use the wood to cook, and they actually light fires in the house to cook. This is a cemetery that was also hit and destroyed, and the ground soldiers, what do you call it? They damaged some of the graves and pulled up bodies and stuff like that. So what the people in Gaza say, it doesn't matter if you're dead or alive, you still get mutilated and destroyed. This is a United Nations building. So even though it is an international organization, it was still bombed, and now it's a makeshift shelter, even though there's destroyed. You find these destroyed schools that are harboring a lot of the people. because their houses are completely demolished. This will show like a hole in the ground from where the missile would land. And then the spirit of the people in Gaza was very uplifting. It's very humbling too. These are people who are living in miserable conditions, and yet every sentence that comes on their mouth starts with Alhamdulillah. And what follows Alhamdulillah is very heartbreaking. Alhamdulillah, I was able to bury my parents yesterday because they've been under the rubble for 2 weeks. Alhamdulillah, I fed my kids today because for the last week they didn't have food. Alhamdulillah, Allah chose me to take 4 of my kids as shuhada, and they're in Jannah waiting for me. And the sentences go on, but their ability to maintain that level of faith, that level of iman, given the circumstances they're in, is shocking. And I asked myself, if I was in their shoes, would I be able to have that same spirit? And I struggled with that answer. I probably wouldn't. And I think one of the things I learned there is that they understood the definition of success. They were raised in knowing that they're in a country in war, and some of the slogans that go by, jihadun imma nasrun aw istishhad, we're going to fight, and if we're going to win the fight or we're going to die within the fight, is ingrained in them. And they know that their definition of success is achieving paradise. It's not the worldly things that we all look for. So when they reflect on their lost businesses, their lost houses, their lost souls, they see this as the success in the thereafter. And they say, we lost everything in the world, so we're not going to lose our thereafter as well. So we have to be patient. إِنَّمَا يُوَفَّى الصَّابِرُونَ أَجْرَهُمْ بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ. They use this word all the time, the verse in the Quran that says that the reward for those who have patience is infinite. And they use that. They say if we don't have anything to look for in the world anymore, then we have to be patient so that our reward in the thereafter doesn't go away as well. And when I came back, I was asked to give a khutbah at Tualatin, and I was preparing, and I found the verse in Surah Al-Hajj. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى حَرْفٍ فإن أصابه خير اطمأن به وإن أصابته فتنة انقلب على وجهه خسر الدنيا والآخرة ذلك هو الخسران المبين. And there are people who worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on edge. And if they have good come their way, then they feel the contentment in their heart and they feel tranquility. But if calamity hits, then they flip over on the other side. And those are the people that lost both this world and the hereafter, and that's the ultimate loss. And I think that renounces with the people of Gaza very much. They understand that their ultimate loss or their ultimate win is not here, and they're prepared for that. And they tell us that. They tell us that, alhamdulillah, that we were chosen because now our reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because everybody else bailed out on us. Our neighbors bailed out on us. Our governments bailed out on us. We thought the Muslims would stand up to help us, and they're not. So we have only Allah to help. And inshallah, they will be rewarded immensely. Most of you saw the videos Al Jazeera about the Shifa hospital. It was actually just completely destroyed when we were there. So Al Shifa hospital was attacked 3 times. Every time they go in, they do some destruction and then they leave. And then they manage to rehab part of the hospitals and open it. So Before this last time, they were actually opened, got the lab to be fully functional, they got the advanced imaging, the MRIs and the CTs to be functional, they got some wards open, they got 2 operating rooms open. So it's the largest hospital in Gaza. It's a big complex, and we'll see some of the videos. So the last time when the Israelis went in, they made sure that it will never be usable again. They destroyed inside and out. And they knocked out every advanced imaging in the north in the North Gaza Strip. So when any of us goes to the hospital here saying my belly hurts, the first thing you get is a CAT scan. There's no CAT scan working in the northern Gaza at this point. So you get people with brain injuries, with belly injuries. You can't image them, and some of them will go to the operating room to explore. You open up and see what's happened. And most of them won't, because there's more casualties than capacity in the hospital and the operating room. So without the imaging, they're leaving people who could be safe to die, and they're trying to pick and choose who goes to the operating room based on who they think they'll save best. But I'll show this video of the hospital, which is saddening, and some people saw it on Jazeera, but.
Emergency room, the walls littered with bullets. Aside from the being blown to pieces. And of course, burn. You see all the smoke marks from the burns. The primary surgical center. This is the core of the medical complex of Shika. And around it are many other medical office buildings and whatnot. I'm just imagining the terror of the people inside, the patients inside, as bombs and bullets rain down upon a hospital. And they've seen the physicians being captured and killed, and they're sitting there alone. I took care of a 16-year-old kid who needs an amputation now from severe infection in his leg. His mom was kicked out at the start of the siege, and so he was left alone. And 14 days later, at the end of the siege, when his mom came to him and brought him to our hospital, he needs an amputation now. He's got empaim on his left lung. Both sides of his chest tubes are putting out pus. His abdominal wounds are full of pus. His leg is necrotic and needs to be amputated. That's just
When we were there, there was a mother that had a missing child, and she came to the courtyard of the hospital and was actually found some of the clothes of what she recognized as her missing child, and realized that probably her child died. People who died were basically just covered where there's spots. So there's the locals say that all these hills cover, mass graves, and there's hundreds of casualties underneath them. You could see from the inside as well. So the outside, they bomb, but then they go in and they bomb on the inside to make sure that the inside is never going to be recoverable again. Here is Dr. Farhan finding some medical records on the floor and taking pictures of them. You find just medical supplies littered everywhere. Patients' IDs. We asked why all these IDs are in the hospital, and I didn't get an answer, but their patient IDs are all being collected. This is an oxygen cylinder that somebody was inspecting to see if it's usable. He was going to take it back in the ambulance. These guys are going to the top floor and trying to collect anything that they think is usable in the boxes. Complete destruction. There is, this was the administrative building. Now, once you go inside again, you get complete destruction. The press people that were on the ground there, they were also taking pictures of the hospital, and one of them was telling us a story of his colleague who wasn't there that day. So he got a threat from the Israelis. They told him to stop photographing for Al Jazeera or else his house will be demolished. So he told his family to evacuate the house, and he said, well, if they demolish the house, I'll join everybody else in Gaza with the demolished house. They're probably going to hit it anyway at some point. So I'm not going to stop filming, and he had his parents leave the house. So 2 weeks later, his house wasn't hit, and his parents told him, well, they're just threatening you. We're tired of living on the street. We're going back to the house. The night that his parents went back to the house was hit, and his parents died. And then he stopped, or he wasn't there on site that day, so I don't know if he's going to go back and work for Al Jazeera or not, but that was the story that the press people were telling us that day. The video here will show kind of some of the hills that you see, which are basically graves. So when the Israelis left, the first people to go in found bodies all over the place. So when they find the body, they just cover it with dirt right where it is. And that's why you find these piles of dirt. Heading back to Rafah was the same convoy that took us, but on the way back, there was another dead body that they couldn't retrieve by the families. So the United Nations convoy actually stopped to retrieve the body. So that black, is a body bag, and there is a dead person in there. They put it on the truck. That truck was traveling with the convoy. It delivered cargo to the hospital, and then was going back as part of the United Nations convoy. And they retrieved that body that they found close to the checkpoint on it. With all the mosques destroyed, the prayers are basically in the courtyards or whatever they can, areas they find. One of the things that I saw in Gaza is that everybody that we work with prays. I would be in an operation, and I would be working with another anesthesia provider, and Dan would go on, and the first question is, do you want to go pray first and come back, or should I go pray first and then come back, so that one person stays in the room? The congregation, the Jama'ah prayer, sun, heat, rain, it's happening outside, and you find people praying. It's amazing lessons, wallahi, subhanAllah, these people. And they all recite the Quran beautifully. We would be in the operating room, and the surgeon would get emotional, and he would start reciting Quran in a loud voice, and the recitation is just beautiful. This was back in the south, and praying Taraweeh in the hospital hallway. This was the admin building, so I don't know if they do it every day, but when we were there, they made sure that we had food for iftar, and then had Taraweeh there. They try to leave us with hope. A lot of the questions I get, especially in the north, when I was there, they say, well, what do you think? Do you think, the war is going to end? Do you think that there is hope? And my answer is always, of course there's hope. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is not going to leave you, and there's hope. But I don't know that I actually believe this answer, given what I see on the ground. I say the words because I have to say words of encouragement, but I don't necessarily believe it. But I think they do. And they're able to smile and give us love signs and give us souvenirs to take home. Translating, it says, from Gaza with love despite the pain, and the date on it. So their sense of resilience is, subhanAllah, amazing. And I think that coming back, I had a little bit more hope that things are going to get better because of the inspiration that I see from the people there, not because of anything I see or read or make my own judgment on. And inshallah, we believe in Allah's mercy, and they are going to be rewarded immensely, inshallah, and there should be hope soon. I hope I didn't leave you too depressed today, but I think that's the last slide, and I'll take questions if anybody has any questions. Rashtan, you mind flipping the lights on?
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair, Ahmed. Barakallah feek. I think the question is the beginning when you said we reach it to the borderline between the at Rafah, between the Egyptian side and the Palestinian side. So can you elaborate where is the physical presence of the Israelis at that time? Because you said we are checked also by the Israelis.
There is no Israeli presence. It's a border physically controlled by the Egyptian government. The Israeli control happens by phone, so the passports go to the, what did we call Mukhabarat Amma, so what would be the CIA version of the Egyptian government. And they have an office in the border, and then the passports hang out there until the CIA version clears the passports to go. But they say it openly, when one of the physicians was denied entry, they say, we didn't get clearance from the Israelis, so you can't go in. So they admit openly that the Israelis have the final say of who's going to go in and who's going to go out, even though they're not physically present. It's all remote control.
The border between Gaza and Egypt is still operating on the temporary agreement for 1 year in 2005 that Sharon and the PA, and I'm assuming Egyptians, made. And in that, the Israelis still are not physically there, but practically there. They control who goes in and out.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khairan for informations. My question is, this war started after. I mean, there was war, but this active attack and invasion started after October 7, right? So this, what did you guys met any from Hamas? Where are they? Are they still on the ground operating, fighting against Israelis, or where are they?
So our movement is very limited. We only have clearance to be in specific places and specific times, so you don't go out and see what's happening. But a few stories that happened when we were there. So the Israelis surrounded Khan Yunis for about 3 months, and the destruction of Khan Yunis is said, I haven't been there, it's said to be similar to what we've seen in the north. And then they withdrew on Saturday. We left Monday, so they withdrew on Saturday. On Sunday, there were rockets fired from Khan Yunis to Israel. And I think the statement was, you can be here as long as you want. As soon as you leave, we're going to fight back. We also visited the morgue. And we were there for about an hour with the people that run the morgue, and they were talking about the types of bodies that come through and the injuries and stuff like that. And they very interesting. They had a system. So if you died in combat, if you're a fighter and you died in combat, then you don't get washed. The body doesn't get washed. It gets wrapped just the way it is and buried. But if you're died, not in combat, then the body's washed and wrapped, and there's a process for that. So they somehow knew who died in combat and who didn't, or made assumptions. I don't know. but we were able to see one of the bodies with a really big piece of bomb, for lack of a better description, just stuck to their chest, and they said that he actually died in combat. So there seems to be some resistance going on. When we were in the north also, we would hear these massive explosions, and the people there get used to it. So, they don't get started like we do. We'd be jumping and they would be fine. And I'd ask, this is a massive explosion. Are we going to expect a whole bunch of people to come? And they say, no, these big explosions sometimes are in empty fields because they're bombing where rockets are being fired. So if they detect a firing from a place, they just massively, bomb it to destroy any underground tunnels. So there appears to be some resistance going on, but obviously the scale is, and the rockets that they fire cause no harm on the Israeli side. They only cause people to be scared. But I think it's a show of resilience rather than a show of power. It's just my opinion.
Assalamu alaikum. And Jazakallah khairan for your efforts. So whenever I go to a new place or meet new people or go to a new country, usually I have an impression about a general good attribute on those people, okay? So what is the general good attribute that you can talk or say about the people of Gaza at this time?
I've been going to Gaza since about 2009, so I've gone to Gaza about 5, maybe 6 times. So I haven't met new people. I've met old friends and country. The general attribute that's striking in the people of Gaza is their generosity. We were there in the north with starving people, and the hospital administration would come every day to make sure that we had food for iftar. And we had our own food, so a lot of times the food they would give us, we would just pass out to other people and stick with what we had. But they would make a point: you're guests, you're coming here to help us. We have to take care of you just like you are coming to take care of us. They would tell us, you left your families, you left your kids, you left your jobs, and you're here with us. The least we can do is take care of you. And that's despite them not having enough to take care of their own kids. So the generosity is by far, and even before the war, when I was in Gaza, their generosity is just, you can speak volumes too. The other thing is their resilience. I mean, I don't think that if I was in their shoes, I would have that kind of resilience. They're able to hold a smile. They're able to say Alhamdulillah. They're able to still pray and make dua at night with the bombs coming on their heads. They're amazing people. You'll not find amazing people anywhere in the world like the people I've met in Gaza.
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair, Ahmed. What need you felt was there needed other than the food and shelter, like that we don't hear about or we don't think about? Everything is destroyed, but what do you think that was missing? Also, can you talk about the non-Muslim volunteers that you went with? Like, what is their feeling and what motivates them to do this?
What do they need? The list is endless. They need everything. They need soap. They need change of clothes. They need toothbrushes. They need power banks that solar charge so they can charge their phone. They need everything. You have a population that's been surrounded for years, and even so before this last war, when you go to Gaza, even though they're surrounded, you wouldn't have a food shortage, but you would have things that, our medical machine is not working and we can't get parts. They can't build a sewage refining station because the Israelis won't let them, so the sewer flows into the sea. But with the war, you've depleted all the resources that they have, so they need, everything. Your second part of the question was what motivates the non-Muslim volunteers to be there. So I've been on these missions for, the last 10, 15 years of my life. I usually go once or twice a year to different places. And the vast majority of people that you meet are non-Muslims. And their drive is different. It's humanitarian, and it's people suffering, and it's, doing my responsibility towards the underserved and stuff like that. And I always found it interesting. So for me, if I didn't have a faith driving, I'm going for the sake of Allah because I'm waiting to go to Jannah, why would I go? And, why leave the comfort of my home to go? I couldn't understand the driving force. But unfortunately, the vast majority of people who work with these humanitarian organizations are actually non-Muslims.
Assalamu alaikum. Is there any restrictions on what medical aid you were able to take in through Egypt versus like what the Israelis are not letting in?
So whatever we can get in Egypt, we were able to cross with. Some of the physicians that came in with a lot of suitcases were not able to get them through Cairo airport. They were told, you have too many stuff and you have to declare it and stuff like that, and they were forced to put them in storage and come back with them. But it's not the most case scenario. Most of us were able to go in with everything we took. But we were also able to buy some stuff in Egypt, medical, food, all that kind of stuff. So whatever we were able to fit in the van made it with us. As long as it doesn't have any, anything that could be used militarily. So, because it goes through X-ray inspection, and they don't let us take anything that they would think would be used military.
So you mentioned that they're at the border, that some of you are let in and some of you are not. Does there seem to be any rhyme or reason why some are not allowed? Like, is it just punitive and random, or do they give you any sort of reason as to why they have denied them entry? Do you suspect anything as to why they have not been let in? If you can just speak to any of that. Thank you.
Why do they not let anybody in? There is no rhyme or reason. So the way the process works is that every organization that tries to get a medical team coordinates with the World Health Organization. So about a month in advance of our expected date, we submit the names and passports and everything of everybody who's going to be on the team, and it goes to the World Health Organization and ultimately to the Israelis for clearance. So our team was delayed by a week, our entry date. So they come back and say, yes, you're clear, and then you're clear on this date, and then a day before you're supposed to cross, they say, nope, nobody's crossing, you're delayed for a week, no reason. So then you try again next week, and then you show up with all the people that they've known about for now 6 weeks in advance, and then they say, no. They could have said no 6 weeks in advance and made it easier on that person, because he wouldn't have left his home and work and gone all the way there just to come back. So there is no rhyme or reason to it. There is a system that allows them to know in advance who's going and who's not going, and yet they still turn people around. We'll stop for Maghrib prayer, and then after prayer we can take some more questions if people have them.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
استقيموا واستغفركم الله الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين إن إبراهيم كان أمة قانتا لله حنيفا ولم يك من المشركين شاكرا لأنعمه اجتباه وهداه إلى صراط مستقيم وآتيناه في الدنيا حسنة وإنه في الآخرة لمن الصالحين ثم أوحينا إليك أن اتبع ملة إبراهيم حنيفا وما كان من المشركين إنما جعل السبت على الذين اختلفوا فيه وإن ربك ليحكم بينهم يوم القيامة فيما كانوا فيه يختلفون الله سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله الله أكبر الله أكبر بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ادع إلى سبيل ربك بالحكمة والموعظة الحسنة وجادلهم بالتي هي أحسن إن ربك أعلم بمن ضل عن سبيله وهو أعلم بالمهتدين وإن عاقبتم فعاقبوا بمثل ما عوقبتم به ولئن صبرتم لهو خير للصابرين واصبر وما صبرك إلا بالله ولا تحزن عليهم ولا تك في ضيق مما يمكرون إن الله مع الذين اتقوا والذين هم محسنون. الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله الله سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
محترمة معلش سامحني.
السلام عليكم. كيف حالك؟ Nice to see you. When did you get back? I got back. Are you here good? Salma actually doesn't want to move back. Congratulations on this. Two girls, huh? Two girls, yes. Two girls. Yeah. Her name is I haven't seen you guys in a while. No, it's been years. It was,
I'm never gonna forget when I said Salam to him at Jum'ah one day. He was like, "Who are you?"
I was just telling you
He was like, "Who are you?"
I haven't seen him in a long time. Inshallah, both of us just grew like crazy. I was like, oh, what year did you leave? I'm sorry? What year did you leave? 2018. 18? Okay, but that was what? Six years ago, so he would have been 14.
By the way, مبروك. The second job.
عقبالك إن شاء الله.
إن شاء الله.
Thank you for the talk. I have one question. Yeah. So the Israelis allow a certain number of trucks and certain items. So the truck could be carrying medical supplies. But part of the what the cargo is crutches. Crutches. So they said no, we're not allowing crutches in. But it's not that they don't allow crutches in. They turn the whole truck around. Oh wow. If there was something in there that they don't like, then they deny entry. So you're working with okay. Then some of them come back because of whatever reason. So you end up with very limited people. So the line keeps growing and growing, and the stuff that's actually getting in is getting.
Oh, I can do my double hand.
So they can't like. Allah is Allah. There is a priority for the foods. They can't. The main concern is like, let's say people from around the world, they send aid, but then it's not their reach to. Not at this point, some of it is getting in, a lot of it is being held in warehouses waiting for the time that you can go in. But they're going to come, so they're using the time to build up cushions from a financial standpoint, so that they can continue once the border opens. Hopefully, inshallah. Because you know how people are, they get emotional, they donate a lot, but then next year they don't donate. So they're trying to capitalize on the donation. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm getting questions one-on-one, so if you guys want to sit down, we'll go through the questions together. أنا شربت مية وملح. A couple of questions I got so far was, so why are the trucks not crossing? So the Israelis are only allocating a certain number of trucks to pass, and there doesn't seem again to be rhyme or reason. So today you were allowed 50 trucks.
And then let's say, and this has happened actually with one of the organizations, it's a truck that's carrying medical supplies, and one of the medical supplies is crutches. So the Israelis objected to crutches. They say, no, we're not letting crutches in. But it's not that they're not letting crutches in, it's the whole truck has to turn around and it's not let in. And then the next truck in line comes. So the amount of aid that governmental, non-governmental organizations are preparing, there's a lot of warehouses in Egypt full of stuff, and they're just sitting there waiting for logistics to cross through. The other part of the question, well, am I donating now and my money is getting there? So it's not necessarily getting there now, but it's giving these organizations a cushion and a reserve because the need in Gaza is going to be for the next decade. So they're building up reserves and they're going to hopefully, inshallah, soon be able to deliver that stuff into Gaza. One of the other question I got was, what's the makeup of our team? So out of the 10 physicians, we had about 5 surgeons in different specialties. There was orthopedic, neurosurgery, urology, plastic surgeon. I was anesthesia, and then we had an ICU doc, we had a wound care doc. I'm blanking on maybe 1 or 2 more. But ER, yeah, thank you. The goal is to have a team that's balanced. So you have somebody at the emergency room, somebody in the operating room, somebody in the ICU, somebody in the medical field, so that when we land in a hospital, we can support the local people in all different fields. There is a lot of organizations working on this. So actually, to some degree, it's getting crowded. You go into the hospital and you find, 7 surgeons and only 3 operating rooms. So it's not necessarily a lack of personnel, it's a lack of facilities. So you have thousands of patients waiting, but there's only 3 functional operating rooms. So if you have an extra surgeon, he's not necessarily that useful at this point. And that level of coordination is not there yet because it's war and it's chaos. But we are able to go in with supplies and food and money to distribute and stuff like that other regular humanitarian organizations are not. So we're serving dual purpose. We're bringing humanitarian workers with whatever we can carry in, and then in the chance that we can serve to full capacity as medical providers, we do. I was, alhamdulillah, fortunate that I was able to go to the north because they're truly short on everything, on personnel, supplies, everything. So it was fulfilling that we were able to help to full capacity. We were 4 doctors, ER, anesthesia, orthopedic surgeon, and general surgeon. And the emergency room at night didn't really have doctors. It was run by medical students because the doctors worked the day and then they had to go feed their families. So we were there at night running, I was in the operating room. We had the emergency room physician running the emergency room and then the 2 surgeons supporting the local people. So we were able to get a lot more cases done that wouldn't have been done otherwise. But in the south, they're a little bit more they're a little bit more staffed well because all the people who went from north to south are giving their efforts and skills in the hospitals. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. Oh, there was another question. Sorry. How can we motivate our youth and young people to volunteer? And is there room for volunteering? So I don't know that at this time, and I could be wrong, but I don't know at this time that there is role for students because when we go, they take our medical licenses and the Palestinian Ministry of Health issues us a permit to work in the hospital while we're there. So I don't know how it would work for students. But because now it's war zone, but when we went, when it's not a war zone, we did take students with us and they would use it as part of their study abroad missions, and they would go to hospitals and they would serve in different capacities, and they would get a wonderful experience because they would see things they would never see otherwise. So a lot of the organizations do take students not during the active war. How to connect, shop and apply, just see what's out there and apply. There's tons of organizations. Yeah.
There is of the last few days, there is food going into North Gaza. Do you see any field hospitals being established in northern Gaza anytime soon?
There is rumors. So when they leveled al-Shifa, the Ministry of Health people were saying that they did that because they want to make sure that there's no permanent facility. But they're hearing that they're going to allow a field hospital to be put on that courtyard sponsored by the Emirates, but it was just rumors. Part of the resilience of the people there is they try to rehab the hospitals. So the Indonesian hospital was shut down, and when we were there, they were in the process of reopening it. They were getting wards, cleared out of the debris and putting some beds in there and trying to shuffle supplies from different areas. So they're very innovative of how to try to rehab the hospitals, but obviously supply is a problem. I didn't see any evidence of actively field hospitals being built, but inshallah, the hope. So again, you have to remember that our motion is very limited, so we see what we see in certain places. But there are organizations that had permanent offices in Gaza before the war started, and these seem to be a little bit more active. Islamic Relief was there, Med Global was there, World Kitchen was there. Trying to think of what else I saw, but visas through very restricted movement, so you don't know exactly what's happening, all around you.
Yeah, one more question. I'm being kind of here very optimistic, right? This war is happening since almost since October 7th, even before that. So is there any kind of signs that this will end? And what is is there any plan to rebuild the Gaza and any kind of coalitions or whatever it is, right? What is the estimate of this entire infrastructure is totally demolished, right? So is there any kind of, plans to do anything just in case if the war ends?
So the locals say that we're going to stay and rebuild, and it doesn't matter how much damage it is, we can handle it. And we've gone through war before, and it's nothing to this scale, obviously, but we're resilient and we'll do it. The question is, are they going to be allowed to do that? And historically speaking, if you look at the creation of the State of Israel, there's not been a Palestinian displacement that was allowed to go back. So is this going to be different or not? Time will tell us. But even today, on the news, they were saying that people from the south were starting to gather their belongings and go up north, and they were shot at. So there isn't any signs on the ground that Israel is going to allow that rebuilding to happen. But the people there are they're saying, well, we're not going to go anywhere. We're going to either die here or we're going to rebuild. So may Allah give them that rebuilding opportunity, inshallah. So each organization does its own thing. So there are organizations that are bigger and they pay their teams and they have employees. So Doctors Without Borders and International Medical Corp, they hire teams. They hire entire teams, and then they go in and take part of the hospital and it's Doctors Without Borders operation. So they deploy typically 6 to 8 weeks. You're there for 6 to 8 weeks and then rotate. The organization that works on volunteers, it's not sustainable to have a volunteer there for 6 to 8 weeks. Most people can't afford that kind of time off and go. So they rotate every 2 weeks. They launch 2 weeks and then go back for the next team.
So Al-Shifa Hospital was always targeted. When you were there, is there any coordination with the Israeli forces that they will not attack at the time when UN staff is inside the hospital?
No, so that was in violation of our orders to actually be outside and go to Al-Shifa hospital. But the pattern during the war is that they go, they create massive destruction, and then they leave. And then they rely on, air force to finish the job. But once they leave a place, usually there is a period of time and there are signs before they come back. So they got used to that pattern. They say, oh, we think they're going to show up, in this area soon, and that soon could be a day, could be 3 days, could be 5 days, but there is movement signs. So when they withdrew, the Ministry of Health officials said, we want to take you to witness what happened in Shifa, and we want you to take pictures and, show them to the outside world. And that wasn't, supposed to be our duty, but you can't say no, You took us in an ambulance. So remember, if you're volunteering to be in Gaza, whether you're Muslim or non-Muslim, you already have a certain belief system. You're not going to be a pro-Israeli and then volunteer to go to Gaza. So you're meeting the crowd that already believes in the cause, whether they're Muslims or not. And they have a strong enough belief in the cause that they're willing to risk their life by being there. So they don't need to be preached to. They're already the preachers.
I don't know if you covered this because I came in late, unfortunately, sorry. But I was just wondering, what is the food like right now for your team, but also for just average Palestinians in the north? Like, what specifically are you eating? Do you have access to?
Is the question what kind of access to food that we have? So we go in self-sufficient. We take with us what we think we'll need. When we knew that we were going to the north, the instructions were pack enough food for a month. We were going to be there for 10 days. But, the instructions was, we'll get you inside. And that's coming from the United Nations, WHO, will get you inside. But we can't guarantee that we're going to get you out on a specific date. We're going to attempt to come and get you on this day. And if it doesn't work, we'll try again on this day. But you need to be self-sufficient for a month. So we carried suitcases of food with us to make sure that we have enough food for a month, which was a good thing because we got to leave it behind, and some other people got use of it.
You speak generally of UN. Is UNRWA is still active?
So for us, it's WHO because World Health Organization, because it coordinates all the entry and gets the permits from the Israeli for all the teams. So and then that contact person that we saw in the video is the kind of contact person for any security needs that we have. So if we're traveling from point A to point B, we call in and we say we're traveling from point A to point B, and then they say, okay, go or don't go or wait or whatever it is. So from the medical side, it's WHO. UNRWA in the north has been completely demolished. Their buildings demolished, their warehouses demolished. And it's interesting because the Israelis say, well, the aid trucks are supposed to be received by the UNRWA and distributed, and people are looting them and stuff like that. But there is no UNRWA staff in the north. So it's, you destroyed all the warehouses, but they're supposed to be receiving it somehow. In the south, they're still operational. They still have food coupon programs. So they go around the tents and then they give coupons, and then the coupon entitles you to a box of, food supply that you take, and then when they get more funding, then they do that over again. And so they still do exist in Rafah. Local efforts. So you have what's remnant of the operating government trying to get all the resources and distribute, and then there are non-governmental organizations that are still trying. It wasn't clear to me how they get their funding, but they show up to the hospital with a pickup truck full of ready prepared meals, and they go around and give it to the patients and staff. And during Ramadan, subhanAllah, there was a lot of that food distribution happening, and the people said that Ramadan comes with the khair, and that's why the food is coming, because before that there was dire situation. Yeah, these are locals.
What was the most dramatic situation that you've been in, whether in the first or the second trip? Dramatic.
That's not an easy one. I think the ambulance drivers, because we met them, we worked with them, we kind of knew them, and then one day they came to the operating room with massive injuries, and we're trying to save them. And then the entire medical staff in the hospital tried to dedicate themselves to these three people. Not that they don't dedicate themselves to everybody else, but because they felt that these is one of them. And not just one of them, these are the people that are putting their lives at risk to help other people, and now they're the ones being targeted. So there was a lot of emotional in it. I was in the operating room when they came, and the chief nursing, the head nurse, came running to the operating room to grab me so that I could run with him to the ICU and help make sure the patient is stabilized enough to come back to the operating room. And we had 7, 8 other paramedics there right with us, trying to say, what do I do? What can I help? And unfortunately, still, they didn't make it. But that entire effort to save the lives, because they felt like it was one of them, was pretty intense. No. I thought I saw your hand.
So you're an anesthesiologist? So how does that work with putting people under right now? I mean, do you have to have a lot of equipment with you? Do you run out of the supplies that you need to administer the anesthesiology or can you speak to that? Thank you.
Yeah, we took supplies with us, and the hospital has the equipment per se. It's not ideal, but it's functional. It's very different than walking into an operating room here, but I've walked into operating rooms in different areas of the world, so I kind of was used to less ideal situations. But the problem is definitely with supplies. So when you do surgery, you use a lot of gauze. It's a special type of gauze because it helps clear the field of blood and stuff like that. So they were running out of gauze. The hospital didn't have any gauze. They were running out of sterile gloves. They were operating without sterile gloves. Things of that you wouldn't think of here, they couldn't find. During one of the orthopedic surgeries, they used a very primitive type of saw to cut the bone, because here you have electrical saws, you just cuts in 2 seconds. There it's a manual, pretty historical saw, and it broke while he was working. So now we have an asleep patient that can't finish the surgery because the saw broke, and they had to figure out if the other hospital, which is probably about a kilometer away had it and then send somebody with an ambulance to go get this off from over there and come back. So there was this hour and a half wasted time in surgery. And it may not sound like a big deal, but when you think about the limited capacity of the OR, that hour and a half could save somebody else's life, wasted because we're looking for a saw. You know, so it's definitely a challenging situation. But as far as the anesthesia goes, we had enough supplies to put people to sleep, so it wasn't that dire. But the stories from the people that were sieged in the hospital, in the same hospital we were in, because earlier in the war they were sieged, that they ran out of all the supplies and they would have to do, you know, life-saving surgeries without anesthesia. So it was pretty bad. When we got there, it was a little bit better. Yes, sir.
What was the most scariest thing you've been through?
Scariest place I've been to?
No, like what? Most scariest situation.
Oh, most scary situation? In general or in Gaza? In Gaza? I think the scariest for me was the very first night. So you know what drones are? So they have these military drones that make a lot of noise. So they call it, they call it zanana. You know what zanna means in Arabic? It means they make that, you know, the kids when they try whining and they make that noise. So they call it zanana, the whiner, you know, it sounds like a zzz, but it's very loud, zzz, and it's there just constantly all the time. And then in between that zzz, it fires. So you hear zzz, and then boom, 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 boom. And then that happens all night. So the first night there, it would startle me every single time it does that. You know, I'd get used to that zzz, and they get boom, and I'd be startled. By the next night, I was tired enough that I slept through it. But that very first night was probably the scariest when I was there.
Here you have like maybe 50, 60, 100 people, they need medical help, and only you can handle few of them. How the judgment will be? Will it be collective with all the medical doctors, or your decision based on who dressed well?
No, alhamdulillah, I'm lucky enough to be in the operating room, so I get whatever comes my way. Somebody in the emergency room has to make that decision of who's going to go to the operating room first. So that's a decision they make every day, who they think they'll be able to save. And especially with so that the drones are very targeted. They fire at people that they want, and they get a lot of head injuries, so they get a lot of bullets to the head. So even if you're able to take them to the operating room, took the fragment out, like the one we saw, you don't have a CAT scan to tell you how much damage there is beforehand. So it becomes a guessing game. Okay, this one looks like it's not really bad, so if we take the bullet out, there's a chance they'll make it. Well, this one actually has an entry and an exit, so that means that there's extensive damage throughout its path, so even if we take him to the operating room, he won't make it anyway, so we're just not going to take him. But it's a decision that they deal with every day. Who do we help and who do we just leave alone? Yeah.
You mentioned the line of trucks at the border earlier, showed it in some of the videos. So did you get a sense, I may have missed that, but did you get a sense why, or why the trucks are not coming through, or again, is it haphazard, kind of like when they turn you around, make you wait?
Yeah, you missed that answer. Where were you? So the Israelis say we're going to allow a certain number of trucks every day. So they say 50 trucks, for example. So the trucks start going in for inspection, and then if they don't like an item on the truck, so like we heard about a truck that carried medical supplies and had crutches, so they said no crutches allowed, for whatever reason. So it's not that they don't let the crutches in and let everything else in. The whole truck has to turn around and then empty the crutches and then, come back and try again, but not come back and try again, stand in the back of the line. So it just keeps piling and piling, and the amount of trucks going through, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It's just depending on whoever issues the order. So today it's 50, tomorrow is 150. When we were in the north, they said that the United States negotiated an agreement to let more food trucks from the Israeli side, because they control the northern border. So they said that they're now going to let, I think it was 150 trucks of food in. So that just happened on our last day there, that the United States said that, but I don't know if it actually materialized or not. We left, so inshallah, hopefully.
So my understanding is that there is two constraints for the truck movement, and one of them is the Israelis and the inspection, and the other one, even if you let them in, there is not really roads or people to distribute them. We hear about them letting trucks in. Is there the infrastructure to actually distribute them?
It's getting less and less, but there is. In the south, it seems to be working. So the trucks go and they unload in warehouses, and the system seems to be working. In the north, it's not. In the north, whatever trucks goes through, it becomes a fight of survival. People try to hop on the truck and get whatever they can out of it, and unfortunately, it becomes, baqa't al-aqwa, it becomes who can get what, and there happens like internal stabbings and stuff like that. Some of the injuries you would get would be stab wounds from fighting over the trucks, because the whole system broke down. You have a lot of people and very limited amount of food, so as soon as they see a truck, they try to get it. Same thing happens with the airdrops. They're still airdropping, and the estimate is that they're airdropping about 5,000 to 10,000 meals a day, and you have a population of 300,000 people. So same thing, the airdrops come and crowds happen, and the trucks are supposed to go to circle. They call it the Kuwaiti circle, and the time of the trucks is known. So they say in the hospital, they say, "Oh, yep, it's time for the injuries from the Kuwait," because it's going to happen, and you start seeing that. So in the north, it's pretty bad. In the south, the system still seems to be holding. You still can walk through the market and buy certain things for those who still have access to, funds. So in the south, the ATMs are still working, and there is. You have to go to pre-war. Gaza has almost two separate governments. Has the Hamas-controlled government and then the West Bank PLO-controlled government. So in all government sectors, you have West Bank employees and then you have Hamas employees. So the West Bank employees are still being paid, and the ATMs in the south are still working. I don't know how they get money there, but they still seem to be working. But there's obviously crowds and crowds. You have to wait in line. So there is some, money coming in. Now, how's their stuff on the market? That seems to be a mystery, because it's, it's not obviously enough for everybody, but there still seems to be stuff in the market. Still walk in Rafah and, buy a can of food, or, walk into the pharmacy and buy whatever they find on the shelf. Also, there's the local produce. You can go in and buy potatoes and, all the local produce. The fishermen were being shot at routinely. One of the things that they were complaining about is they destroyed a lot of their boats by airstrikes, and then if they do go out to sea, they get shot at by the drones.
So how did you guys continue to check in with the patients that needed medication if there was a lot and there was an overflow?
That's a big problem. So you do an intervention and you save somebody's life, and then they end up in the medical ward, but they're lacking enough antibiotics, they're lacking enough medicines to treat their blood pressure and stuff like that, and then you get more complications and more deaths afterwards that are totally preventable just because lack of supplies. But for us as a surgical interventional team, we do the intervention and then hand it over to the docs on the floor, and they're working under challenging situation too. But that's one of the issues. Though, if you show up at a hospital, not even with a war injury, if somebody shows up at the hospital because their pressure is too high or because they're having a heart attack, all the hospitals that had abilities to treat heart attacks have been taken off commission. So if somebody has a heart attack, there's nothing to do about it. They go there to the emergency room and they die anyway. So it's not just war injuries, it's just regular day-to-day medicine that people are not able to get, and the system is collapsing, or collapsed actually.
I know you said you'd been to Gaza a number of times before, but have you done medical missions in other countries and in other wars, and how does that compare to this current situation?
Yes, I've been to other countries, but not necessarily in wars. I've gone to Uganda, for example, where it's a different level of poverty. It's also driven by civil war. So you get refugees from neighboring Congo that come over to Uganda and become refugees, and they have refugee camps for them. So these refugee camps are very primitive. They're just mud houses, no infrastructure for water, electricity, or sanitation. And then the United Nations builds a clinic, and then if you need a hernia surgery, you wait for years because they have to wait for outside teams to come and perform surgeries, and there's a line, and it's just a different level of poverty that you don't see in other places. But the amount of massive war injuries that you see in Gaza, I don't think anybody saw it anywhere else in the world. You get the targeted people who are targeted, they lose 2 or 3 limbs and they're still alive, and the amount, the degree of their injuries, even if it's 1 limb, is just substantial. I refrained from putting any graphic pictures, but you see, you look at 1 injury, and I don't think you've ever seen that anywhere else in the world.
After triage, what is the success rate of surgeries? So just looking at the people who get to you, what is the percentage of people who make it through the surgery? And what would you say is the percentage of people who survive post-op as well?
So, with absolute chaos, you don't have statistics, but from what I've seen is that a lot of preventable deaths happen. So you take somebody out of surgery to go to the, whatever we can call an intensive care unit there to take care of, and it would be a pretty simple routine, recovery here, and then you go next morning, check on them, and they're not there, and it's really hard to tell what happened because there's not good record keeping, and the night person has already gone home, and the morning person doesn't know because when he came, they had already passed. So you kind of wonder, what happened, but it depends on the injury. So when we get multiple injuries, so you get somebody with fragments to their belly that they're working on, but they also have a fracture in their leg, and they also have a head injury and stuff like that. Most of these people don't make it. They try. But sometimes, like that kid had just an insulated, the one with the bullet, had a single bullet. She was far enough that the bullet went into her belly but didn't injure anything else, so we got it out, and she was fine. They have videos for her a couple of weeks after, and she was running around, and she was fine. So it just depends, but definitely the mortality rate, the amount of people dying after surgery is very, very high. We're running out of time. Ibrahim has a question. Say again. if I took more of something while I was there, chocolate for the. Yeah, chocolate for the kids. They all asked me if I had candy. And I did have candy, but not enough for massive amounts of kids. So you can't, it's very heartbreaking. I can't give one person and not the others, but they'll all try to attack me for the candy that I have. So I save the candy for my fellow people in the operating room and tell in secrecy, give them candy and say, here's a gift. But it was heartbreaking that I would say no to all the kids who wanted to ask me for candy. So next time, if you plan to go there, take a lot of candy. So I'm going to give you an opinion, obviously, but I think that not doing anything should not be an option. So you have to find something to do and not worry about the impact, because the impact is, up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're not going to get immediate gratification from what we do. So if we protest, is that going to change the American policy tomorrow? No. But is that over time going to have more awareness for people that are going to eventually vote? And then, activism fatigue. So if we're super excited now and we're doing all these things, but then a year from now nobody's doing anything, then we really lost the impact, where we have to have sustained efforts to change the political system. So it's very heartbreaking that all of us to feel that, well, I'm doing this, but nothing changes. But we shouldn't wait for the change. We should focus on what can I do. And I'm sure you can find something to do. There's plenty to do. So there has to be something you can do, and not worry about results. As far as what do they feel? They feel let down. They say, obviously, neighboring is Egypt and Jordan, but they say, why isn't there demonstrations in Egypt and Jordan? We see all these demonstrations coming from the U.S. and London and stuff like that, which is great. But what happened to our neighbors that are totally, abandoning us? So they feel very let down. They have this sense of betrayal from their neighbors, and it seems to get them to settle that, okay, we're not expecting anything from anybody. Our hope is with Allah, and He's gonna help us. And I think the amount of faith that you see and hope is astonishing. Do they have enough female doctors? Generally speaking, they do. During the war, they don't, because now these doctors are also mothers and sisters and daughters, and they're taking care of their households and trying to feed the kids and trying. So you find a lot of female doctors that are, not practicing like they used to before the war. Same for nurses and everything. But you see a lot of the younger crowd that's stepping up. So you see a lot of medical students, a lot of nursing students, a lot of volunteers that are female, and they're trying to step up because they have less responsibilities at home. No female what? Oh, the volunteers? Yes, there have. So our team didn't have female volunteers. But the other teams did, yes, there were female volunteers. Jazakumullah khair all for bearing with me and not being bored by my long speech here. And may Allah reward you for being here, and please keep people of Gaza in your dua. And Inshallah, do what you can. You know, it's like Sister Manar was saying. You know, don't lose hope because you're not seeing results. Still, continue to do what you can. Inshallah.